أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله تعالى من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله أدى الأمانة وبلغ الرسالة وجاهد في الله حق جهاده حتى أتاه الله اليقين. ابتعثه الله ليخرج العباد من عبادة العباد إلى عبادة رب العباد، ومن ضيق الدنيا من سعة الدنيا والآخرة معا، ومن جور الأديان إلى عدل الإسلام. اللهم اجزه عنا خير ما جزيت نبيا عن أمته. I praise Allah. I praise Him and I thank Him, and we praise Him all together. And we seek His help, and we seek His forgiveness. And it's who we seek from Him sincerity in our hearts. We seek from Him the refuge from all the evil we've done, from any mistakes or sins we've committed. And we seek refuge in Him from cursed Satan. And we seek His help and His forgiveness, and we seek His guidance. And we ask Him to send His peace and blessings upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, and all the prophets before him, and all those who follow in their footsteps until the day of resurrection. Whomever Allah, the one true God, guides is truly the one who's guided. And whomever He leads to stray, you'll never find for him a guardian nor a guide. And I bear witness that there's nothing worthy of worship or direction or submission or our seeking of help or our seeking of pleasing Him or our calling in need when in need, except Allah, the one true God, the high and exalted, the powerful when we're powerless, the one who's in need of nothing and we're in need of Him all the time. And I bear witness that Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, is His messenger and prophet, the final messenger and prophet that He sent to earth, from the human family, to the human family, to free us, to bring us out, to emancipate us, to liberate us as a human family, everyone, from enslavement to one another, from enslavement to lower desires, from enslavement to selfish attitudes, to be the servants and the slaves of the Lord of creation, fulfilling His will on earth. And from the constraint, the word, the small aspiration of believing that life on earth was all there was to live for, to the liberation that comes with knowing that after life on earth is the real existence, that our existence is a long, eternal existence that starts at one point and never ends. And earth is just a stop on the way. And it's the stop to determine what the rest of our existence is like. And from the injustice that comes with making decisions based on our own whims and desires for what's best for us personally, or what's best for the people that we know personally, to the freedom and justice for the whole world that comes with divinely guided decision-making that's based on the guidance of the one who created this entire earth and everyone in it. So may Allah, the high and exalted, and glorified, give Muhammad the best reward that He has given a prophet and a messenger for his nation. Last week, we talked about giving. And there's 3 categories that we said before Ramadan started. That we said that this month, I will worship God like I've never worshipped Him before. And we said that we're all going to try to stay true to Him. I will worship Allah like I've never worshipped Him before. And Allah is now looking at us. We said it. Each of us either said it verbally, or when we heard it, we said, that sounds good, I want to do it. And Allah's looking upon us. And last week we talked about the category of giving. And we said there's 2 other categories. Our prayer, salah, and the Quran, the scripture. Those 3 categories. The if we can worship Allah like we've never worshipped Him before in those three categories, we will leave Ramadan in a much better place than we entered. And when God promises us that He'll give us a fresh start, that He'll allow us to come with all the problems that we have entering this month, every problem we can't solve, all the habits we have a hard time kicking, all the problems that we have at home, or that we have with decisions we need to make about our children, or about a home we need to sell, or problems that we have earning a living, the problems that we have doing the right things with our wealth, or relationship problems that we have with our family, people that we haven't talked to in years, even though they're blood relatives, neighbors that we've never known the name of. We're coming to Allah in this month with all these problems on our back. And that's just our personal problems, let alone our nation and the racial tensions that are in our world and the death toll that daily increases in Syria and in Gaza and in Iraq at the hands of those who claim Islam in some cases, and at the hands of those who fight anyone who claims Islam in other cases, and at the hands of those who have nothing to do with faith and claim their transgressions to faith in other cases. All of that's happening. And we are the ones saying, we're going to worship you, Allah, like we've never worshipped you before. So where does prayer, where does salah fit into that? And salah, the Prophet ﷺ, when he said that on the day of resurrection, when we all stand up, when we're all risen, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He says, look at the rain when it falls down on a barren land. You guys have seen sometimes in the summer, your lawns being yellow and dead. And when the rain comes, it comes back to life, and things start growing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that's how we will resurrect you. We will be dead, nothing there. And Allah will send down rain, and we will all come back to life. Every last human. And when we come back to life, we're going to stand in front of Him. And the Prophet, peace and blessings upon him, says that a servant who wants to serve Allah, when he stands in front of God, the first thing, before anything else that he's asked about, will be about his prayers. And the Prophet ﷺ, in another hadith, in another tradition of his, he says if it's good, everything else he's asked about will be good. And if it's not good, then there's probably problems in everything else. So the question is, what are we doing that isn't fitting with what he did? Is it in the motions? Is it in the way that we raise our hands? Is it in the way that we say the takbir? Or that we bow sometimes before the imam bows? And sometimes pray with parts of our body showing that shouldn't show? Is that the problem? Maybe that's part of the problem. But the first thing we need to do is to go back to what is salah? What is this prayer we're establishing? Are we doing it because we have to? Or are we doing it because we see what it serves in our lives? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He never said in the Quran, Salli. Never does He say the word salah without the word in front of it, aqim, or qum, or aqimu. You guys remember that word, that Arabic word, iqamah. We talked about it a few months back with the young man who took salvage, who took refuge in a cave. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts out before they go and hide. And a lot of people thought they're hiding from persecution. And we rediscovered that they're not hiding from persecution. The correct understanding of those verses is that they're going back to meet together, to strengthen themselves and to figure out, how do I call my people in a way that will be relevant to them and that will go around them persecuting us until they hear us. They weren't going to run away. On the contrary, they were going to figure out how to go back into the challenge stronger. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to start it out, He says, إِذْ قَامُوا فَقَالُوا. When they stood up, and the word iqama, when you make iqama of a construction, it doesn't mean that you just patch it together. It doesn't mean that you put part of the building in Arabic. When you say iqama of a building, iqama of anything, it doesn't mean that it gets patched together. It doesn't mean that you put one pillar of the foundation and the other pillars you don't really worry about the material that you use. It means that you establish it and erect it and raise it and make sure that it's perfect and make sure when people walk by they see no problems in it and make sure that its foundation can withstand the test of earthquakes and of wind and of hurricanes if you've built the best building. That's iqamah. So why does Allah use that same word for our prayer? And the word isn't prayer in Arabic. Salah isn't prayer. Salah comes from salah or salman. And that means made a connection. So 5 times a day, it's not about praying. It's about connecting. And that connection isn't just something we make and leave. It's something we establish. So what does it mean to establish? Why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say to the Prophet ﷺ? First, in Muzammil he says, قُمِ اللَّيْلَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. Stand, the same word, qum, not just stand. Stand and establish the night except for very little. So the Prophet ﷺ was instructed that the night time for him, and in the first 3 years, of his mission, there was no prayer that was obligatory except one. And that was to stand in the middle of the night when people were sleeping. To stand in the night and pray. He and anyone who accepted his mission with him, their job was to stand in the night and pray. قُمِ اللَّيْلَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. That was the obligation, not an option. Not an option that we do on the night of power, on Laylatul Qadr, and then the rest of the year we don't see it. It was the obligation of those who were given the job to re-establish, to rebuild a nation back based on belief in God and based on bringing people back from what they were doing to each other. The only way a community could have a small group bring people back from all the strong cultural pushes of selfishness and of doing things to each other that aren't right, is that that group must have a significant power behind it. They must be able to withstand the hurricanes and the earthquakes that will shake them. And that's what Salah is supposed to do. قُمِ اللَّيْلَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ نَاشِئَةَ اللَّيْلِ هِيَ أَشَدُّ وَطَئًا وَأَقْوَمُ قِيلًا. That if you want to have eloquence of speech, and if you want to have impact on your heart, stand in the night. Then the next surah he reveals to him with the same starting word. قُمْ فَأَنذِرْ. Now that you understand what will empower you, now you stand and warn. Now you stand and tell people that the problems in society will not be solved with each person thinking of a solution that first thinks of himself and then maybe everyone else. No, it's the solution that God gives all of us that will help everyone be just. It's the solution that God gives us, the morality that God gives us, the connection to Him that He gives us. That's what will bring us all back to a happy place. And that happy place can only be brought if there's a group willing to establish prayer in their lives. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Isra, He says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِّمَّنْ خَلَقْنَا. That we have honored the children of Adam above everything or almost everything that we created. Because maybe angels are not honored less than humans. Only Allah knows. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala leaves it open. Almost everything that was created, this human being was honored above it. And in the midst of those verses that Allah is describing what makes the human honored, and the mission, and the work that's supposed to be done on earth, He says, أقم الصلاة طرفي النهار أقم الصلاة لدلوك الشمس إلى غسق الليل وقرآن الفجر. This ayah, right in the middle of verses that have nothing to do with rituals. They are talking about the efforts of a people trying to fulfill what God gave them on earth. The efforts of a people and the mistakes that people make with each other and what people are doing to each other. And then he says to the Prophet ﷺ, establish the prayer. And then in another surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, and we have learned this verse, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ تَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ أَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that prayer prevents bad things, bad thoughts, and ill deeds done to people. That's what prayer does. That's what the connection of salah does. So if it's not doing it, something's wrong. But the thing that's missing for us isn't what is it not doing for us. The thing that's missing for us is two things. When we're doing it, what is our thoughts on? What are we thinking about? Is it just we're fulfilling an obligation? Are we coming to salah to fulfill the obligation? Umar ibn al-Khattab, he said, and some people are afraid to recite this tradition of Umar. He said that I prepare armies, I prepare campaigns in my prayer. And some people hearing this think it means that he's thinking about other things. He's thinking about his work, his job, while he's praying. That's not what he means. He means that the first part of doing my job, the first part of preparing for the work that I'm tasked to do, that I'm mandated to do, is in my prayer. So when I'm preparing for the campaigns, the first part of preparation for the campaigns is in the prayer. Not that he's sitting praying to Allah and thinking about all the preparations, on the contrary. But he's thinking about the implication of his prayer on what he's about to do. So, for instance, when one of us comes to pray tonight in Taraweeh, or right now when we pray the Jummah, and we're going to go back to work. And at work, we're going to run into people who we don't like. They're doing things that are not good to us. And we have an option of doing things not good back to them, or of presenting the better person, of presenting the better option, the option that uplifts people, the option that makes them realize that you're better than this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the human family a group of people who would establish prayer so that they leave the prayers and go out into the earth, bringing people back to what's better for them. Bringing people back to be raised above the small, petty things that we get sucked into. And if prayer doesn't do that for us, then we need to revisit all parts of it. We revisit, for instance, the wudu that we're making. When we go to make it, thinking about everything else, washing up, leaving parts unwet, drying off, and going to pray. Our beloved Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said in a hadith authenticated by Imam Ahmad, that when the servant goes to wash his hand, all the mistakes that he's made with his hand, they drop off his hands until they leave the Prophet to make it clear that it's not just a metaphor. He's making it clear that it's real. Until the sins and the mistakes are dropping off between his fingernails. You don't see them, but that's what's happening. And when he goes to rinse out his mouth, he's rinsing out all the mistakes that he made. All the yelling that you did out of turn because you didn't put a space between what aggravated you and the response you had. All the talking about people behind their back that you may have slipped into, or that you initiated because you have something against that brother, or because you think that sister just doesn't like you and you need to make people know that you're better than her. Everything gets rinsed out. And now you start new with your tongue and your mouth, ready to say the good things. And the Prophet ﷺ continues, and when he washes his face, all the sins and mistakes of what he saw, come out of his face until they drop out between his eyelids, out of his face. And as he rinses his head, all the thoughts, all the ill conceptions, all the assumptions of evil about people. When someone does something assuming that they did it for ill intention, they meant to do that, they meant to hurt you. All those thoughts leave. And all that's left is the thought of peacefulness. And then when he washes his feet, he washes away all the places he went that he shouldn't have gone. He washes away all the things he went and spent his energy to go and do that he shouldn't have been doing. And then he steps out. Allahumma ja'alni min at-tawwabin wa min al-mutatahhirin. Oh God, make me of those who return to you and those who repent. Make me of those who return to you and those who purify themselves constantly. And then he enters. And the first thing he says, he stands facing the Qibla before he says anything. We're directing ourselves physically. The question is, are our hearts directed to Allah? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَيْسَ الْبِرُّ أَن تُوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ قِبَلَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ وَلَكِنَّ الْبِرَّ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ. The righteousness isn't which direction we face. Of course, we face the right direction when we pray. But the more important, what's the real birr, is to redirect the heart, to redirect the mind. If you're going to do it 5 times a day, don't allow what was in between those prayers to overcome what you're about to do and pray. Don't waste your time. Make it worthwhile time. Redirect your mind to Allah. Recommit yourself. Aqim as-salah. If you establish and erect and raise the prayer, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will empower you and I to erect and raise and establish life for people. If our community in America, if our community in Evansville needs anything, it needs a group of people. And it doesn't need to be the 300 of us that are part of this community. If 10% of us establish the prayer, like our beloved peace and blessings upon him taught us, we will leave the prayer every time, going out into our city, making the impact that no one else can imagine can be made by people. Because that is what the prayer did for our beloved. But it can't be a prayer that we're doing for obligation. It can't be a salah that we're doing because we were born Muslim. It can't be a connection to Allah that we're doing because someone is watching me and now I need to make it a little better. It has to be redirecting our heart to Allah. And we raise our hands, and everyone worries about where to raise the hand, but we don't worry about what we're doing by raising the hands. We're throwing everything that was in front of us behind us because Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater. Allah is greater than anything you can think of. Allah is greater than anyone you can seek help from. Allah is greater than anything you can direct yourself to. Allah is greater than any wealth you can try to accumulate. Allah is greater than any person that you try to please. If you try to swerve from your convictions, or if you try to please someone who thinks that you serving those who are in need. A brother came to me last night and said to me, this is an aside, he said to me, maybe talking about service broadly is going to make people less likely to help the unfortunate people in Muslim lands. And you need to remind people that we're all one body. Muslims are like one body. When a part of it has a hurt, the whole body falls into fever. I told him, my beloved brother, on the day when my brothers in this community have only one set of funds to give, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to decrease their funds when they give it, I will tell them to only give to Muslims. But since I believe in our beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he said, مَا نَقُصَ مَالٍ مِّن صَدَقَةٍ, that wealth does not decrease from charity, when a man or a woman that believes in God on the last day sees a person in need, or knows that there's need, they should be the first to serve, Muslim or not. And one doesn't take away from the other. And if we think one takes away from the other, let's revisit our beloved Prophet's promise. The land that we're in must be our land, must feel our impact. And that impact must be the impact that the believing men and women throughout time, throughout history, had on the lands they were in when they followed the example of our beloved Prophet. And the first step, you can't be a good man and a good woman and do good deeds and not try to perfect it with your connection to God. When someone asks me, because sometimes we get confused. People see people praying, people who are philanthropists or have philanthropy effort in their heart, are doers of good deeds, help the needy, help those who need help. They come and see people who pray and don't do those things. So they say, I'd rather do the help. My heart is good. God knows where my heart is. Prayer. God knows I will pray. And I pray in my own way. But our beloved Sallallahu made it easier on us than this. Don't be confused. That the one who wants to establish nation building and giving and service the way our beloved Sallallahu taught us, in the way that his followers did, in the way that all the prophets did, it must be to humble ourselves to the connection to God 5 times a day on time. And be organized and establish it. And do it in congregation when you can. Don't get lazy from the congregation. Because what the congregation does, whether it's the morning prayer, the Prophet ﷺ, when he says, "Man salla al-fajr fi jama'ah, kana fi dhimmat Allah," that whoever prays the dawn prayer in congregation will be in the protection of God everywhere he goes. Don't be confused. Yes, service and good deeds will still be impactful. But you want the real impact? You want the sustainable impact? You want the lasting impact? Don't let my khutbahs confuse you and think that the prayer isn't the first step of that impact. On the contrary, you establish the service and the impact first by establishing the prayer. First in our personal lives. Young men who are in high school here in Evansville, make a difference in your high school. First, by establishing a time for the Dhuhr prayer in the winter. Do not group your prayers after you come home from school, fearing that someone will talk about you at school. Be a man like the men that God talked about in the Quran. رِجَالٌ صَدَقُوا مَا عَاهَدُوا اللَّهَ عَلَيْهِ. Men who are honest and truthful with the promise that they made to God. This is not optional. The establishment of prayer isn't an option in our lives. And if Ramadan is going to do anything for us, it's going to help us re-establish prayer in our lives. And when we re-establish and erect and raise, because I can't translate أَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ except with 5 words, minimum. Elevate, establish, raise, erect, and continually improve. That's Iqamah. قولوا قولي هذا أستغفر الله العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. وبارك اللهم على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. If we are to establish prayer in our lives, it's important for us when we say Allah and throw everything behind us, to understand each part of our prayer, what we're doing. When we bow to Allah, we're saying we're not going to bow to anyone like we bow to you. When we say you are the greatest when we're bowing, we're saying you are the greatest. When we prostrate and put our most honorable part of our body on the face of on the floor or on the ground, we're saying that you are worthy alone, O God. You are the only one worthy of me humbling myself to this level. And I humble myself to you, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. I humble myself to you, and you are the highest. You are the infinitely high, al-A'la. Know what we're saying, and why we're saying it, where we're saying it. And there isn't time for us to go through each part. But we will find the time together to go through every part. And to go through the things that may negate the establishment of our prayer. Whether it's what we're wearing when we're praying. And yes, it sounds to you and to me like, does God care about what we're wearing? No. What He cares about is that we're willing to observe the boundaries that make us have order, that make us understand the order of things. Everything in the universe has a harmony. And the only being, the only creation that doesn't glorify and praise and serve, everything praises and serves. And when someone asks me about Green Ramadan, I can't give you a whole khutbah on it because of the time. But if you want the simplest answer for why we should recycle and why we should observe all the things we observe when we tell each other that that's what we need to do, is because everything in the environment is serving God and is part of the harmony that God gave earth and is part of the servants of God. We're not evolutionists who believe that the survival of the fittest is what determines our masterhood of earth. On the contrary, we believe our masterhood is because we honor everything on earth. But to the establishment of prayer, we will take the time. And every one of us will humble ourselves, no matter how perfect we believe our prayer is, including myself. We will reconnect with every part of the prayer, young and old, so that the young don't think that it's about the young, and the old don't think it's about the old who don't come to prayer often. We will revisit every part of it, because it is high time that we worship Allah like we've never worshipped Him before. And it's high time that we establish the prayer and erect and raise and elevate our nation and our community and our city from a small group who will erect and raise and elevate the prayer, the salah, the connection to Allah. And when we come in Taraweeh, a voluntary prayer, it is more befitting and more priority to make that much effort for an obligatory prayer in congregation. And that's all I will say about it. I do not want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. But when we come to the dawn prayer in Ramadan, and there is 7 to 8 people, we need to revisit the challenge that we have. I know it's not easy. I know the schedule is not easy. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala empower all of us in what we're doing. But make the intention. Make the intention. And watch God make it easy for you. Don't say I can't. It makes you see the world with a slant. Say it's hard for me to, and Allah will make it easy for you. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت اللهم اغفر وارحم وتجاوز عما تعلم انك انت العزيز الحكيم. Allah, we ask you to guide us with those you guide, and forgive us and accept us. Allah, we ask you your love, and the love of everything you love, and the love of all things that lead to your love. Allah, we ask you to send your peace and tranquility and love upon us. You are the peace, you are the tranquility, and you are the one who gives all love. Allah, this is what we ask, and we ask you to send the peace and blessing upon our beloved Muhammad. Accept our fasting and our prayers and make them sincere for your sake alone. Allah, make our prayer a connection to you every time we pray to you, and make us sincere for you, and make us establish with it our lives for your sake, and elevate our nation for your sake, and elevate the Muslims around the world for your sake, and guide and elevate those who are not Muslim, who seek you for your sake, and those who don't seek you. Purify their hearts and stop their oppression of those who are oppressed. Allah, this is what we ask. And upon you we depend, and in you we trust. And the last of our prayers, alhamdulillah, praises to you, Lord of the world.